When I saw my husband scrolling through my phone, my heart jumped, not out of fear of being caught, but because of what he might see. The messages. The very ones I had forgotten to delete. I tried to snatch the phone away, but he pulled back skillfully and kept reading. I watched his face change, line by line, feeling my life unravel in seconds. Yes, now he was about to know the truth. But not all of it. His hands trembled as he flipped further, and I knew he was about to reach the message that would destroy my life. The one message that would explain everything and put a final mark. Or perhaps confuse him even more. Suddenly, my phone vibrated in his hands, and a new notification appeared on the screen. I saw his face pale as he read the sender's name. He froze. Didn't even blink. I bit the inside of my cheek, a nervous habit. My nerves mixed with the horror of what I'd done. His breath quickened. I could hear it even from 2 meters away. It was exactly what I feared the most. Because 3 months ago, I made a mistake, the mistake that changed everything forever, and now I didn't know what to do. But let me tell you how it all really happened. Before I share the secret I've tried so hard to keep, write in the comments where you're watching from, and answer this question. Have you ever had a secret you fought to hide with all your might, only for it to slip out in the end? I never imagined I would find myself here, tangled in a web of emotions I didn't fully understand. My marriage, stable and comfortable for years, had settled into a routine that left little room for excitement or passion. I loved him, but the years had worn down the spontaneity and warmth that once filled our home. I craved more, not necessarily because something was broken, but because something vital was missing. Physical touch became a rare currency between us, and the romance felt like a distant memory. Work was my refuge, a place where I still felt capable and alive. When the new project came along, and he arrived, my boss, everything shifted. He was confident without arrogance, attentive without being intrusive. His presence stirred something inside me I had buried long ago. At first, it was subtle, a glance that lingered too long, a smile that seemed meant only for me. Our conversations grew charged with unsaid meanings, a dance around topics that barely scratched the surface. The late nights in the office became a quiet ritual. Alone with the hum of computers and the soft glow of desk lamps, the distance between us shrank. The air felt thick with tension, a mix of professional focus and personal desire that neither of us dared to name. I caught myself watching his hands as they typed, imagining what it would be like to touch them, not in the way of colleagues, but something more. At home, my husband was engrossed in his world, oblivious to the change creeping into mine. His tired smiles and absent-minded kisses reminded me of how far apart we'd drifted. I felt like a ghost in my own life, present but unseen. That night, when he asked if I wanted to stay late for a meeting, I hesitated, then said yes. It was the beginning of a journey I wasn't prepared for, but one I couldn't resist. The office was empty by the time we wrapped up. The silence between us stretched, filled with things left unsaid. I found my breath catching when he stepped closer, his eyes searching mine for permission, or perhaps for the courage he lacked to speak aloud. Then, as if time slowed, we kissed. We kissed. And everything shifted. Fear mingled with exhilaration, guilt tangled with longing. When my phone rang, jolting me back to reality, I almost dropped it. It was him, my husband, reminding me of the life waiting just beyond these walls. I gathered my things quickly, retreating from the charged atmosphere as if fleeing from a storm. At home, I put on the mask of the devoted wife, while inside, a tempest raged. I was playing a dangerous game, torn between loyalty and desire, and I knew the stakes were higher than I dared admit. The next days blurred with stolen moments and whispered messages. Each interaction with my boss felt like walking on a tightrope, one misstep and everything would come crashing down. Yet, the more I tried to resist, the stronger the pull became. I found myself dreaming of possibilities, of a life where I was seen, desired, and valued in ways I hadn't been for years. When the invitation came for a business trip, it felt like a lifeline. A chance to escape the monotony and explore the growing connection between us. The long drive, the quiet hotel rooms, it all felt surreal, as if I were living someone else's story. We talked openly, sharing fears and hopes, testing boundaries. Every glance, every touch was electric. I was caught between the thrill of new affection and the heavy weight of my commitments. Back home, the silence between my husband and me grew louder. He noticed the changes, the guarded looks, the distracted smiles. I avoided his questions, afraid of what honesty might bring. The tension simmered beneath our polite conversations, threatening to boil over at any moment. Our secret meetings became a fragile thread holding together two worlds that were never meant to intertwine. I wrestled with guilt and desire, love and betrayal. Each day felt like a step deeper into a maze with no clear exit. And all the while, I wondered how much longer I could keep the truth hidden before it shattered everything I'd built. The nights at the office began to stretch longer than necessary, the clock hands moving slower as we found excuses to delay our goodbyes. The quiet hum of the air conditioning, the clicking of keyboards long silenced, and the soft glow of desk lamps created a bubble outside the world, where rules felt suspended. Alone in the sterile environment, the air thickened with a tension that neither of us dared to name aloud. Every glance carried weight, every subtle touch on a shared document became a spark igniting a fire inside me. The way he looked at me was no longer that of a mere boss and subordinate, but something far more intimate, charged with meaning. I felt exposed, vulnerable, and exhilarated all at once. The walls I had built around my heart wavered, threatening to crumble with each passing moment. I caught myself thinking about him at times when I should have been focused on deadlines or family dinners. The image of his smile lingered in my mind, distracting me with thoughts of what could be, rather than what was. At home, the air felt heavier, colder. My husband's silences grew longer, his eyes less searching. The gap between us was no longer just emotional, it felt physical, a chasm that I feared might never close. One evening, after a long meeting, we found ourselves alone in the conference room, the fluorescent lights casting sharp shadows on the walls. The conversation between us was stilted, but beneath the surface, currents pulled us closer. He reached out, his fingers brushing against mine briefly as he passed me a folder. The contact was electric, jolting me awake to a world I thought I had left behind. And then it happened. We kissed. We kissed. The moment was brief, a flicker in time that shattered the calm facade I had maintained for so long. It was not about passion or romance, but a recognition of a truth that had been simmering beneath the surface. The kiss was a silent confession, a crossing of an invisible line that neither of us fully understood at the time. My heart raced as the door clicked open, and my phone buzzed insistently in my purse. The sudden intrusion of reality shattered the fragile bubble. It was my husband calling, unaware of the storm brewing in the shadows. I swallowed hard, composed myself, and answered with a practiced calm that belied the chaos inside. Returning home, I was a stranger in my own life. The comfortable routine felt suffocating, the silence between my husband and me louder than any words. I dressed carefully, selecting clothes that would hide the turmoil beneath, but my hands betrayed me with restless movements. My mind replayed the kiss endlessly, questioning the meaning and the consequences. The following days were a balancing act between two worlds. At work, I became adept at hiding my emotions behind professional smiles and focused conversations. At home, I wore the mask of the devoted wife, but the gap between us yawned wider with each passing evening. My husband noticed the change. The subtle distance I tried to conceal was becoming impossible to ignore. Messages began to appear on my phone, each one a thread pulling me deeper into the complexity of this new relationship. Our words were carefully chosen, layered with meanings only we understood. The excitement of secrecy mingled with the growing weight of guilt. I found myself torn between the comfort of familiarity and the allure of the unknown. When the invitation came for a business trip, it felt like an escape and a test all at once. The prospect of spending uninterrupted time with him filled me with both hope and dread. The journey was long, filled with moments of silence that spoke louder than words. We navigated conversations about work, life, and dreams, peeling back layers of ourselves in ways neither of us expected. The hotel room became a space where pretenses fell away. The city outside bustled with indifferent energy, while inside, time seemed to slow. We shared stories and fears, finding in each other a refuge from the roles we played. The lines between colleague and confidant blurred, and I realized how much I had been craving this connection. Yet, even in the warmth of this newfound closeness, doubts gnawed at me. What was I risking? What would happen if the fragile balance shattered? The thought of my husband, waiting unknowingly, filled me with a sorrow that tangled with my desire. I struggled to reconcile these conflicting emotions, knowing that each step forward was a step further into uncertainty. Returning home, the distance was palpable. My husband's eyes searched mine for answers I wasn't ready to give. Our conversations became guarded, filled with silences heavy with unspoken truths. I avoided his questions, deflecting with vague reassurances that only deepened the divide. The secret meetings continued, each one a stolen moment that left me breathless and anxious. I was living two lives, caught between loyalty and longing, comfort and risk. The tension built steadily, a quiet storm threatening to break free. I wondered how long I could keep this fragile facade before it all came crashing down around me. The day of the business trip arrived with a strange mix of anticipation and dread. I packed my bags meticulously, choosing outfits that balanced professionalism with a subtle hint of confidence I hadn't felt in years. As I zipped my suitcase, I caught my reflection in the mirror, a woman caught between two worlds, uncertain which path to take. The journey to the conference was long and quiet. Sitting beside him in the car, the air between us was charged but unspoken. We exchanged occasional glances, each holding back words that hovered just beneath the surface. The miles stretched out as we shared fragments of our lives, work challenges, dreams long forgotten, and the small disappointments that had shaped us. In the hotel lobby, the world outside bustled with the usual business rush, but inside, time seemed to slow. The room we shared was small but comfortable, a temporary shelter from reality. The dim lighting cast soft shadows, highlighting the tension simmering beneath our polite smiles. We spent hours talking, peeling back layers of professionalism to reveal the vulnerabilities beneath. He spoke about his struggles balancing ambition and personal life, revealing cracks in the polished exterior I had only glimpsed before. I shared my fears, the loneliness that had crept into my marriage, the silent longing for connection. It was a conversation neither of us expected, yet it felt inevitable, as if years of unspoken thoughts were finally finding a voice. Yet, amidst the closeness, I felt a growing unease. The knowledge of the risks we were taking hovered like a storm cloud, threatening to break at any moment. I caught myself second-guessing every glance, every touch, wondering how much longer I could keep this delicate balance. The days passed in a blur of meetings and quiet moments stolen in corridors and hotel lounges. Each interaction deepened the complexity of our relationship, blurring the lines between professional and personal. We talked of future projects, but beneath the surface was an unspoken question: what would become of us once the trip ended? Back home, the silence was deafening. My husband's presence was a constant reminder of the life I was stepping away from. His questions, once casual, grew pointed, though I carefully deflected each one. I felt the walls closing in, the risk of discovery looming ever closer. Despite the tension, I found myself drawn back to the excitement of this new connection. The contrast between the predictable life I led at home and the unpredictable emotions stirred by him was stark. I was caught in a whirlwind of desire and doubt, unsure where the path would lead but unable to turn away. The trip ended, but the echoes of those days lingered. The memories of shared secrets and stolen smiles haunted me, making it harder to resume the life I had paused. I felt torn between duty and longing, between the safety of the known and the allure of the unknown. Each day brought new challenges, balancing work, family, and the growing complexity of my emotions. I became adept at compartmentalizing, but the strain showed in small ways: a distracted glance, a missed call, a sigh heavier than usual. The tension was a quiet presence, shaping every interaction and decision. I knew the path ahead was uncertain, and the choices I faced were not without consequences. Yet, for the first time in years, I felt alive, even if that life was fraught with risk and heartache. The journey was far from over, and the questions remained: how much could I sacrifice, and what would be left of me when the dust settled? Returning home after the business trip felt like stepping into a different world, one I had left behind but couldn't quite escape. The familiar sights of my house, the soft creak of the floorboards, the faint scent of our shared life greeted me with a mixture of comfort and unease. I was no longer the same woman who had left. The days away had shifted something deep inside, and that change echoed in every corner of our home. The quiet tension between my husband and me was impossible to ignore. His eyes searched for answers in my every glance, his voice careful but probing in the questions he posed. I answered with practiced vagueness, careful to reveal nothing while feeling the weight of each omission settle like a stone in my chest. The silence stretched between us, thick and suffocating, making even the simplest exchanges feel like fragile negotiations. At work, the pressure increased. The project's stakes had risen, deadlines loomed, and the eyes of the company were fixed on our success. My boss and I found ourselves working late more often, the office emptying around us until only the faint glow of computer screens remained. In those quiet hours, the dynamic between us grew more complex. Professionalism mixed with an undercurrent of emotion neither of us openly acknowledged. One evening, a confrontation with a colleague tested my resolve. A misunderstanding about responsibilities escalated into a tense exchange, and I found myself defending not only my work but also the subtle partnership that had formed with my boss. The incident left me shaken but also clearer about the boundaries I was willing to cross and those I was not. It was a reminder that the stakes were real, and the consequences of missteps could ripple far beyond the office walls. Despite the challenges, moments of connection persisted. Glances laden with unspoken meaning, brief touches that lingered just a moment too long, and conversations that danced around the edges of what was acceptable. Each interaction was a careful balancing act, a push and pull between desire and caution. I found myself analyzing every word, every gesture, searching for signs of what might come next. At home, my husband's behavior shifted subtly. He became more watchful, less trusting, his casual questions carrying an edge of suspicion. I sensed his frustration and confusion but was powerless to bridge the growing divide. The man I had known for years was becoming a stranger, his love tangled with doubt and hurt. The silence between us was no longer peaceful but charged, a battlefield of emotions fought in the quiet spaces. The duality of my life weighed heavily on me. I was caught between two realities, each demanding loyalty and attention. The comfort of my marriage clashed with the excitement of new affection, creating a turmoil that left me restless and uncertain. I wrestled with guilt and desire, love and longing, trying to find a path that could reconcile the conflicting parts of myself. In the depths of the night, I often lay awake, haunted by questions without answers. Was I betraying myself as much as I was betraying him? Could this fragile connection survive the inevitable consequences? The future felt uncertain, a landscape of possibilities both terrifying and tantalizing. Through it all, I clung to moments of clarity, brief flashes of understanding that reminded me who I was beneath the confusion. A woman seeking connection, meaning, and truth in a world that often demanded compromise. The journey was far from over, and the choices ahead would define not only my fate but the lives intertwined with mine. The days that followed were a tangled weave of emotions and stolen moments. At work, the demands only intensified, and with each late evening spent together, the invisible thread between us grew tauter. We operated within a delicate dance, an unspoken understanding that our connection had shifted into forbidden territory. The risk heightened every heartbeat, every glance filled with quiet electricity. I noticed the changes within myself most keenly during those hours. My thoughts drifted unexpectedly to him in the middle of meetings, my skin prickling at the memory of our fleeting touches. The mundane routine of office life suddenly felt charged with potential, every small interaction pregnant with possibility. I dressed more carefully, selecting outfits that spoke in subtle codes of confidence and allure, though nothing that could betray me outright. One afternoon, after a particularly exhausting day, we found ourselves walking through a nearby park, a rare chance to step outside the confines of the office. The sun filtered through the trees, casting dappled light on the path ahead. The air was crisp, filled with the scent of early autumn, and for a moment, the world seemed suspended. We talked about everything and nothing, work, life, dreams that had been set aside. The ease of conversation belied the tension simmering beneath. I could feel his gaze on me, soft yet intense, as if he was searching for something beyond words. Our steps slowed, and without thinking, we paused beneath a towering oak. The moment hung heavy, charged with emotion. We kissed. We kissed. There were no grand gestures, no elaborate declarations, just a simple, undeniable truth spoken in a single breath. The world shifted on its axis, and I felt both grounded and adrift. The kiss was a crossing point, a silent acknowledgement of the feelings we'd both been denying. Yet, as quickly as the moment blossomed, it ended. The sound of footsteps nearby reminded us of reality's ever-watchful presence. We pulled apart, a mix of relief and regret washing over me. The park, once a sanctuary, now felt like a stage where the next act of this unfolding drama would play out. At home, the distance between my husband and me grew more pronounced. His late nights at work mirrored my own, but where I carried secrets, he carried suspicion. His questions, once gentle probes, became sharper, edged with doubt. I evaded as best I could, threading my answers with care to avoid raising alarms. Yet, I knew the truth was slipping through the cracks. The nights alone were the hardest. The bed felt too large, the silence too loud. I longed for connection, for the comfort of shared warmth, but the gulf between us seemed unbridgeable. The memories of the kiss lingered, a bittersweet reminder of what I was missing and what I risked losing. Secret meetings became both a refuge and a source of anxiety. Each encounter was a gamble, a step further down a path without a clear end. I wrestled with the guilt that settled deep in my bones, but also with the exhilaration of feeling truly seen and desired. The duality was exhausting, a constant push and pull that left me raw. Amidst this turmoil, conversations with him grew more personal. We shared fears, hopes, and the cracks in our carefully constructed facades. He revealed vulnerabilities I hadn't expected, and I found myself opening in ways I hadn't in years. The connection was real, complex, and fraught with contradictions. As the project neared a critical phase, the pressure mounted. Deadlines loomed, and the stakes felt higher than ever. The weight of my double life pressed down, threatening to crush the fragile balance I struggled to maintain. Yet, even in the face of uncertainty, I clung to the moments of clarity and connection that made the risk seem worthwhile. The question that haunted me most was no longer if this could last, but what would happen when the inevitable reckoning came. How much could I sacrifice before there was nothing left to hold on to? And when the truth finally surfaced, what would remain of the life I once knew? The invitation came unexpectedly, wrapped in the routine language of business but carrying a weight far beyond the surface. A conference in another city, an opportunity to present our project to key stakeholders. When he asked me to join him, the question hung between us with an undercurrent of possibility and risk. I accepted, knowing this trip would change everything. The journey was long and quiet. Hours spent side by side in a car gave us time to shed the professional masks and speak more freely. Our conversations unfolded slowly, revealing layers of hopes and regrets neither of us had shared before. The hum of the engine and the passing scenery formed a backdrop to the unfolding intimacy, subtle yet undeniable. We arrived at the hotel, a modest place that felt like a small world detached from the pressures waiting outside. The evenings were filled with discussions about work interspersed with moments of silence heavy with unspoken questions. I noticed the careful way he looked at me, as if measuring the distance between us and deciding whether to cross an invisible line. Doubts crept in with every passing hour. The weight of my choices pressed down, mingling with the excitement of connection. I wrestled with the consequences I might face, the lives I could hurt, and the uncertain future looming ahead. Yet, the pull of this new relationship was powerful, a force I could neither deny nor fully embrace. Back home, the changes were palpable. My husband's questions grew sharper, his observations more acute. He noticed my absences, the distracted glances, the half-truths I offered. Though I deflected and reassured, the tension between us was undeniable, a silent crack running through the foundation of our life together. Throughout the trip, moments approached where we nearly crossed boundaries yet pulled back. The tension was a tangible thread connecting us, fraying at the edges but never breaking. Each close call left me breathless, caught between desire and restraint, longing and responsibility. The conference itself was a whirlwind of presentations and meetings, but the evenings offered a fragile sanctuary. We shared meals and quiet conversations that peeled back the layers of our carefully constructed facades. In those moments, I glimpsed the man behind the role, a complex mix of ambition, vulnerability, and quiet strength. Despite the closeness, I was painfully aware of the gulf growing at home. The gap between my husband and me widened, marked by silences heavier than words and a growing sense of distance. I felt torn between two worlds, each demanding loyalty and leaving me fractured. As the trip neared its end, the inevitable question loomed: what would happen when we returned? Could the fragile balance we'd maintained survive the realities waiting for us? The answers were uncertain, and the stakes higher than ever. This journey was not just a business trip, it was a crossing point, a moment of reckoning where choices made in quiet moments would echo through the days to come. I returned with a heart heavy with conflict, knowing the path ahead would demand courage and clarity I was still searching for. The night at the hotel marked a turning point I had both anticipated and feared. After a day filled with meetings and presentations, we found ourselves retreating from the crowd, seeking a quiet moment away from the relentless pace of the conference. The room, dimly lit and stripped of pretense, became a space where the walls between us dissolved. Our conversation shifted from the professional to the personal with a natural ease that surprised me. We spoke of dreams deferred and choices made, each word peeling back layers we had guarded so carefully. The atmosphere was charged, every glance weighted with unspoken emotions. When the moment came, we didn't hesitate. We spent the night together. It was not an act of reckless abandon but a deliberate crossing of a line that had been drawn in silence. The gravity of that decision settled over me like a storm cloud, mixing exhilaration with a deep sense of vulnerability. The connection between us was undeniable, yet it carried with it the weight of consequences that stretched far beyond the room. Morning brought a quiet stillness, the reality of our choices settling in the soft light filtering through the curtains. We shared no grand declarations, only the understanding that everything had changed. The fragile balance we had maintained was now broken, and the path forward was uncertain. Back home, the tension was palpable. My husband's demeanor shifted, the subtle cracks in our relationship widened into visible fissures. His eyes searched mine with a new intensity, and the silence between us grew heavier. I felt the walls closing in, the space for deception shrinking with every passing day. The discovery came unexpectedly. Through the routine syncing of devices, my husband stumbled upon the messages, fragments of a truth I had tried desperately to conceal. His hands trembled as he scrolled, his face a canvas of disbelief and hurt. The silence that followed was deafening, filled with the weight of words left unsaid. In those moments, I saw the fracture we had created, not just in our marriage but in the fabric of our lives. The consequences of my actions unfolded with a cruel clarity, and I was left to navigate the ruins of trust and the uncertain path toward forgiveness or loss. The days that followed were a delicate dance of confrontation and retreat. We spoke cautiously, each conversation a tentative step toward understanding or further fracture. The emotional landscape was fraught with pain, regret, and a longing for resolution. I grappled with my own guilt and confusion, torn between the desire to hold on to the life I had built and the undeniable pull of the connection that had drawn me away. The choices before me were stark and unforgiving, demanding a clarity I was only beginning to find. Amidst the turmoil, moments of tenderness surfaced, fleeting reminders of the love that had once been the foundation of our relationship. These glimpses offered a fragile hope that healing was possible, even as the shadows of betrayal lingered. The journey was far from over. The path ahead was uncertain, marked by difficult decisions and the slow, painful work of rebuilding. Yet, in the midst of the chaos, I discovered a resilience within myself, a determination to face the consequences and seek a truth that could set us free. The atmosphere at home had shifted into something unrecognizable. My husband's silence was no longer peaceful but heavy, loaded with questions he refused to voice. His eyes, once warm and familiar, now held a cautious distance, as if trying to shield himself from a truth he wasn't ready to face. I moved through the rooms like a ghost, feeling the weight of unspoken words pressing down on us both. Each day was a study in restraint and careful navigation. I found myself measuring every gesture, every phrase, afraid that a single misstep might unravel the fragile threads still holding us together. The conversations we managed to have were terse and guarded, each sentence chosen with the precision of a diplomat negotiating a fragile ceasefire. At work, the tension was no less palpable. I threw myself into the project, seeking refuge in the tasks and deadlines that demanded my full attention. My boss became both a sanctuary and a source of complication. Our interactions grew more cautious, shadowed by the knowledge of what we'd crossed and the consequences looming over us. Our secret meetings continued, though the thrill was tinged with anxiety. Each encounter was a risk, a step deeper into a labyrinth of emotions and choices. We shared moments of genuine connection, tempered by the awareness that the world outside was closing in. The duality of my life became a constant balancing act, one that left me exhausted and raw. Inside, I grappled with a whirlwind of feelings, guilt, desire, hope, and fear swirling in an endless storm. The love I had for my husband was not extinguished, yet the bond between us was strained to its limits. The connection with my boss offered a reprieve, a glimpse of something new and uncertain. The night stretched long and restless. Sleep eluded me as I wrestled with questions that had no easy answers. Could we rebuild what was broken? Was forgiveness possible? And if so, at what cost? The future seemed a fragile thing, hanging by threads I could barely grasp. I sought solace in small rituals, a cup of tea in the quiet kitchen, a walk through the neighborhood under the indifferent stars, the pages of a book that offered distraction but no escape. These moments grounded me, reminding me that life continued, even when it felt fractured and uncertain. As days turned to weeks, the pressure mounted. The facade of normalcy became harder to maintain. My husband's watchful gaze was a constant reminder of the fissures in our relationship. I sensed his struggle, the conflict between love, betrayal, and the hope for something better. Despite the tension, moments of tenderness flickered like fragile flames. A shared glance across the room, a gentle touch on the arm, brief words that spoke volumes in their brevity. These were the threads we clung to, fragile but real, weaving a tapestry of possibility amidst the ruins. The path ahead was unclear and fraught with challenges. Yet, within me, a quiet determination grew, a resolve to face the consequences, to seek understanding, and perhaps, in time, to find a way back to peace. The moment came unexpectedly, like a sudden crack in the surface of a frozen lake. My husband, after days of silent suspicion, confronted me with the evidence he had found, messages, conversations, fragments of a world I had tried so hard to keep hidden. The weight of those words hung between us, heavy and irrevocable. His eyes bore into mine, searching for answers I struggled to provide. The truth spilled out in fragments, confessions tangled with apologies, explanations shadowed by regret. The emotional eruption that followed was raw and unfiltered, a clash of pain, betrayal, and desperate hope for understanding. Our conversations became battlegrounds where trust was questioned and emotions ran high. We faced the reality of what had been broken, the fragile remnants of a life once shared. The process was painful and exhausting, yet necessary, a slow unraveling that laid bare the complexities of love and hurt. I wrestled with my own feelings, guilt that gnawed at my conscience, sorrow for the pain I caused, and a flicker of hope that forgiveness might still be possible. The man I had known, the partner I still loved, was caught in a web of betrayal and confusion. Outside influences began to seep in, friends offering counsel, family opinions weighing heavily. The pressure mounted, complicating an already fragile situation. I felt torn between the desire to protect what remained and the fear that some things could never be repaired. In the midst of the turmoil, moments of vulnerability surfaced. We shared memories, revisited the foundations of our relationship, and sought glimpses of the love that had once defined us. These moments were fragile, like delicate glass, easily shattered but precious beyond measure. The future stretched before us, uncertain and daunting. The choices were no longer abstract but immediate and pressing. We faced the possibility of separation, reconciliation, or something altogether new. Each path was fraught with pain and promise, demanding courage and honesty. Through it all, I discovered a strength I hadn't known I possessed, a capacity to face difficult truths and confront the consequences of my actions. The journey was far from over, but in that confrontation, a new chapter began, a tentative step toward healing and understanding. The story of us was rewritten in those moments, marked by loss and resilience, betrayal and forgiveness. The path forward was unclear, but it was ours to navigate, one fragile step at a time. The decision I faced was the culmination of months of turmoil, uncertainty, and emotional upheaval. Standing at the crossroads of my life, I was forced to confront the consequences of my actions and the fragile threads that still connected me to both the past and the uncertain future. The days leading up to the choice were marked by introspection and restless nights. I weighed the love I had for my husband against the undeniable connection I had formed elsewhere. The comforts of familiarity clashed with the allure of possibility, and the weight of responsibility settled heavily on my shoulders. Conversations with my husband were raw and honest, stripped of pretense. We revisited memories, acknowledged wounds, and laid bare the truths we had long avoided. The pain was palpable, but so was the resilience, the shared desire to find a way forward, whatever that might look like. Simultaneously, the relationship that had ignited the spark of change demanded reckoning. The promise of new beginnings was tempered by the reality of the hurt caused and the challenges ahead. Both paths held risks and rewards, and the line between them was blurred by the complexity of human emotion. In the quiet moments alone, I reflected on the woman I had become, the fears I faced, the hopes I nurtured, and the strength I had discovered. The journey had reshaped me, revealing depths of courage and vulnerability intertwined. The final choice was not a moment of clarity but a process of acceptance, a recognition that life's complexities rarely resolve neatly. I chose a path that honored both truth and compassion, seeking balance between forgiveness and self-respect. As the dust settled, the landscape of my life transformed. Relationships evolved, boundaries were redrawn, and a new chapter began, not without challenges but with a renewed sense of purpose. The story of love and loss, betrayal and healing, continued to unfold, marked by the enduring human capacity to adapt and grow. In the end, I learned that no choice is without cost, but every decision holds the potential for renewal. The past shaped me, but it did not define me. And with that realization came a fragile hope, a belief that even amidst pain, there is the possibility of peace. This was the closing of one story and the beginning of another, a journey marked